Independent journalists actually matter. So please support independent journalists like Jeffrey and David Krayden and the other journalists whom we have on the show. It's really, really important. So thank you guys all for subscribing, because if you subscribe, it's free to the show, and it really helps get these messages out there that mainstream media blocks, bans, censors, and hides. So,
yes, like Disu right there, who just subscribed, and you get your name on the screen.
Yeah, if you subscribe,
so
welcome to the rebellion. If you subscribe, your name will pop up here on the big screen. So thank you, Disu. Appreciate it.
All right, I'm excited about the next few stories. Excited, not like, oh, I'm happy about it. Excited, like I'm worked up about it.
And that we're going to shed light on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to tell you about how Justin Trudeau feels the need to tell Muslim people how they think and feel about gender. Maybe next he can take on the fact that they pray in single-sex spaces. That would be sensitive. How about that?
Tyrannical Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, because he believes in, telling people how they feel.
I mean, the protests are popping up all over Canada now against him, saying, keep your hands off our children. Keep your hands off our children. Go Canadians. Way to go. People should take to the streets. Go out there. Join these groups that are showing up at these government buildings and telling them, keep your hands off our children stop pushing this ideology on our children anymore. So good for Canada for taking the lead on this. Maybe we can all learn from them, like what they did with the trucker convoys. And the rest of the world was like, holy shit. Yeah, we need to stand up. So way to go, Canada.
Right. Some gumption there. I like it.
Well, Muslims all over Canada have come forward in protest against Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government, calling on the government to, quote, leave our kids alone, keep gender ideology off our kids. Justin Trudeau claimed on Wednesday that Muslim parents who are against their children being brainwashed by LGBTQ ideology in schools are just victims of misinformation and disinformation from the far right and from the American right wing. That's right. So it reminded us of this piece from former White House spokesperson Jen Psaki, of course, who now works at MSNBC. She echoed this sentiment that Muslims are being controlled by the right in this gender critical movement. Listen.
So lately I've been noticing the reemergence of a very old GOP playbook. The right wing is reviving that same playbook, this time with Muslim Americans and trans people. Hear me out here. The GOP is trying to recruit Muslim Americans, a community that makes up less than 2% of the U.S. population, against another tiny marginalized group of Americans, transgender people.
Well, journalist David Krayden, who's just covering this story, has written a piece in the Post Millennial about this, all these protests that are emerging across Canada as these protests grow. And David joins us now. David, good to see you. So it appears that Trudeau thinks Muslims, I guess, can't think for themselves.
No, he really believes, or he is attempting to make himself believe, that Muslims are, as you said, the victims of some broad U.S. conspiracy. And it answered my question, because when Muslims across Canada, especially here in Ottawa, and Calgary's been a hot center as well for Muslim protests, I asked myself, how is Justin Trudeau going to address this? Because if he attacks the Muslims, it's going to be Islamophobia.
Right.
And yet he can't allow Muslims to attack the gay pride season, as Justin Trudeau calls it. So the question was, does homophobia trump Islamophobia? That's the conundrum Justin Trudeau had. Because when Canada has become a nation, a collectivist nation of identity politics, where every different segmentation has special status and special rights. We're no longer equal under the law, which is where this country originated and where it must go back to. But in Justin Trudeau's Canada, everybody has special status, except, of course, evangelical Christians, who are the most vilified people in Trudeau's planet.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's an interesting dichotomy, isn't it? That why can't the left seemingly cross Muslims? Like, that's an off-limits thing. We absolutely cannot. No, you're brainwashed by the far right. Like, as a Muslim, you're being brainwashed. You are, you're sacrosanct. But Christians, they're fine. They're fine to vilify Christians. Why is that? I mean,
they're fine to vilify Christians.
It's a big question.
Unfortunately,
of course,
because evangelical Christians have not fought back to the degree that they have traditionally in the United States against this left-wing upheaval. And I think I am damn proud of what these Muslims have done in this country, because they have taken up the slack from other religious groups, including conservative Catholics, who should be out there as well in great numbers, saying, we don't stand for this. We don't think 13-year-olds should be seeing pornography in their schools or being told they have a right to change their identity, their gender identity, without even telling their parents. And really, Trudeau has gone so far with this LGBTQ ridiculous alphabet soup agenda that people, common sense people of all faiths, are saying this rainbow flag doesn't represent anything except hatred against our values, because there are a lot of people who still question this sexual fetishism that LGBTQ month is selling people. It's no longer just about tolerance or acceptance of gay people. It's about acceptance and promotion of a huge variety of sexual fetishes and a huge distinction that children can suddenly be treated as adults. And what I fear this is going to, if we allow children to say, I have a right to change my identity at 13 and not tell my parents, and my parents have no say in this, then they can be treated as adults, and that is the broad opening to pedophilia being accepted and legalized. That's where this is going.
Well, we already see the infiltration, of course, by MAPS and others. We see how the rainbow flag went from, gay and lesbian. Suddenly now it's infiltrated with the trans rights activism. So now you've got this new crescent this chevron shape that's now encroached on the flag. How many more things can you cram into this flag? It'd be interesting to try to figure out. But why do you think that they ignore the very tenets of Islam, right? That's the question here. So he's sitting there talking with these parents, and the parents are saying, no, this is Islam. Like, it's very gendered. Islam is very gendered. And like, you can't, it's like, you can't ride in cars or pray with the opposite sex. It's a very gendered religion. And so it's almost as if they're ignoring that part of it.
Well, it's interesting because it gets back to Trudeau's basic creed, which essentially is a socialist Marxist creed. He believes Muslims have a false consciousness, in the old Marxist phrase, the same way that working class people used to support conservative parties and not socialist parties because they just didn't buy into the ideology. He's saying, what's wrong with these Muslims? They should be thinking like me, because Justin Trudeau is a Catholic, and he has he's had an audience with the Pope, and yet Justin Trudeau cannot abort babies fast enough in this country. We have literally abortion on demand up to the last trimester,
and suicide on demand.
Justin Trudeau thinks that's okay.
And now suicide on demand in
suicide on demand.
Yeah.
And the school system is becoming completely obsessed, as it is in the United States. It's becoming completely obsessed, not with teaching children things that are going to enrich their lives and help them become adults. It's teaching them a variety of sexual habits, which have no place in the school system. These are things that the parents have got to be regulating. And Trudeau says that's a far-right concept as well, that parents should have any right to do that.
I love that they're leaning on this far-right idea that they can't think for themselves. And so Trudeau has done this repeatedly with people, that they're being infiltrated by the far right in America, this ideology. This is why you're setting up this freedom convoy, because you're being infiltrated by the far right, by white supremacists who are taking over. That's who's influencing these people. Why are they speaking for them? Why is the Trudeau government speaking for Muslims instead of listening to them? I mean, they're literally in protest, standing there telling them, keep your hands off our children. It could not be plainer, right? It's not an ambiguous statement. Keep your hands off our children.
Yes, and of course, Trudeau appointed an Islamophobia czar. This is what's so ironic about this, because he sees Muslims as victims. Most Muslims don't see themselves as victims at all. They see themselves as regular human beings working in Canadian society alongside their neighbors. They don't see themselves as victims. Trudeau sees Muslims as victims, and he wants to keep them in a victim box because that fits in with his identity politics. If he can victimize people and segment our society and put one group of people, one race of people, one religious group against another, the identity politics works for the Liberal Party, but it's collapsing right now. And this is the crucial matter here, is that Trudeau's identity politics is is demonstrating how hollow it is, that you cannot put people in an ideological box and say, you have to vote liberal because we're the only party that really stands up for your rights. Because the Liberal Party cannot define rights for anybody. Individuals have to define what their rights are and who they want to vote for. And that's called basic democracy. And that's something Justin Trudeau simply doesn't believe in. He believes in forcing his views on other people and telling them how they should vote. And this is, for a while, you didn't hear the usual U.S. style from the Liberal Party because they were liking the U.S. style of Joe Biden. They think that's great, the way Joe Biden's going. So now it's gone. It's not U.S. style is not the code word anymore. It's American right wing. It's MAGA Trump. It's U.S. Christians. It's the far right. So it's the vocabulary has changed, but it's the same thing. It's the same idea of pointing to this foreign enemy that's somehow telling people in this country how they should think. This is an insult not just to Muslims, but to everybody, to a lot of the conservative Catholics who don't like Justin Trudeau either, because he says they've got a false consciousness. They shouldn't be thinking and voting as they do.
Wouldn't be surprised how many members of the White House, the Democratic Party in the United States, are helping out their Canadian friends to the north with Zoom calls and conference calls to help them get on the same language messaging. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all. David Krayden, thank you so much. We'll link up the article, your most recent piece in Post Millennial, keeping an eye on Justin Trudeau and speaking for the Muslim population. I would love to hear from the Muslims who are watching our show right now. Let me know in the comments below. What do you think of Justin Trudeau in Canada, our Canadian viewers up there? David, great to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Clayton.
Thanks. And Alex here in our chat says, yes, Clayton, Trudeau, the tyrant, needs to leave those kids alone. Yes. I mean, great for these Muslims who are going out and protesting and standing right in the face of Justin Trudeau and saying, no, we think for ourselves. We just don't want you touching our children. We don't want you pushing this LGBTQ plus blah, 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 blah ideology on our children in schools.
What I love about it, though, is that it shows how much more people have in common than are divided. Mm-hmm. Whereas the left is the party of division and telling you that, you don't know how to be sensitive to Muslim people. You don't know how to be sensitive to Black people. If you are in those populations, other people don't understand you. You have nothing in common. Don't worry. The left is the Mary Poppins to pat you all on the head and make sure you're safe in your own little corners. They don't want you to be a united front. And what we're realizing is that most people, we have more in common than we think. And one thing is protecting our children, not hypersexualizing the entire planet, those kind of things. I find it very encouraging to find more common ground.
I was speaking with a friend in Canada today who was telling me, starting first grade school for his little girl, and was just telling me that went to the school and couldn't believe that they were saying when we introduce our children, we tell them that they are going to, they're non-binary. So he's like, here's my daughter. My daughter is starting school. They're like, no. Your daughter is not a daughter. Your daughter at this school is a they, them. And then they discover what their gender is.
That's incredibly condescending to the child.
Yeah, no. My daughter knows that she's a girl.
Right.
What the hell are you talking about? What is happening in this clown world? So, yeah, that's what's happening.
I mean, beyond the fact that that's an agenda push, that also is very condescending to a child who knows what they are and saying, you don't know yet, so we're going to put you in this neutral category until you figure it out, right? Most kids know pretty early what their gender is and find comfort in that. So, yeah, go ahead.
And unfortunately, what's happening now is if they stand up against that, they'll be kicked out of school.
Right.
The child. Yeah.
Yeah, or the parent will be labeled a bigot for standing up for their own child's gender. Oh my God. Well, we need to fight this stuff, guys. We need to fight this stuff.
It's time to resolve to resist. And that's what we need to do in this country. And that's what we're going to continue to do in this station. So I want to thank you for listening today. Thank you for watching today. I think we've got the information here that people who watch the nightly news aren't necessarily getting. And that's the point. And that's my goal, is to give you that information. So for Krayden's Right, from Stand on Guard, I'm David Krayden, and I'm just happy to be able to talk to you again this week, and I'll be back again soon with more information. Thanks for watching.